Welcome all. I'm glad to start seeing some people join us today.
Excuse me, could you tell me the date? Is it the 15th?
Correct.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. It's good to start seeing some familiar names join us in the chat room. Thank you all for continuing to join us via Zoom as we're still in this continuing transition period to virtual and in-person meetings. We're going to give it just a few minutes for people to keep rolling in here. Thank you all for your timeliness. Hope everyone's continuing to stay cool in this heat wave, at least speaking for the metro area. I see Luke in the chat room. We had the pleasure of heading out on our bike ride when it was 99 degrees in the parking lot last week. Just to confirm, if someone can give me a heads up that you're hearing me okay and you can see the slides that I'm sharing now.
Looks good to me.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure a few more people will continue to join us. I'm going to get us rolling along here pretty quickly. We've got a tight window here for the virtual setting. Hoping we can continue to keep things moving along here. So today is the fourth annual Higher Ed Bike Forum. Today we're speaking specifically on bike share programs on campuses. I'm so glad we're able to continue this program virtually, both in the sense of allowing more people to join us possibly, as well as this is going to be recorded, so we're able to have this be the jumpstart to a resource that can be used for years in the future as well. A quick look at what we're going to be going over today. So we've got 5 speakers lined up to share with us today, both as speaking from institutions, speaking from providers, speaking from places like MnDOT and the state, giving us some insight on different directions and challenges that have faced this year, as well as more general bike share goals in the long run. So we've got the start of hopefully what is going to continue through this program being a case study of programs that have been successful, as well as some insight from partners that are going to be needed in this process for making bike share a success on your campus or institution. Some of those key topics and questions I've been hearing throughout the year and focusing on today are things like potential questions of answering what maintenance of a program looks like, what liability or safety issues need to be answered, what possible barriers to entry there are, as well as what partnerships are out there for how we can make this happen in a more efficient and equitable way. So the first half of the session, we're going to be hearing from more broader Minnesota and bike share programs throughout the state. We're going to have a good opportunity to have some breakout discussions about halfway through, as well as a break. You can expect that break just after 11. So if you need to take care of anything or just take a mental break, as we're all tired on Zoom, you can plan on doing it then. And then the second half of the portion is going to focus a little bit more metro focused, as well as not to exclude Concordia, Moorhead is also in the second half of our session there as well. So in the essence of time, I'm going to have us do introductions through the chat box. I'll do mine verbally, but you can share with us in the chat box just so we can all get a good sense of who's joining us here on the network. So my name is Carl Hedlund. I use he, him pronouns. I am currently a Green Corps member serving with the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota. The higher education network and this forum are some of my key areas. It's been an interesting year through COVID and the transition of that, but looking forward to, like I said, being able to start creating some resources that are recorded and virtual, so we're able to have them with us in the future. And what I'm hoping to learn today is what aspects of this virtual setting we might be able to carry on into the future to help break down some of the ways that we can have people from all across the state join us for these forums, as opposed to them just being metro-based or just being somewhere that is too far for folks to travel for a couple hours of a session. Awesome, it's good to see some familiar faces joining us. And continue to join us in the chat there today. We're going to ask, of course, everyone's really used to Zoom here, that we keep conversation in the chat when it is not a time frame that is specifically designed to be conversation. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for questions and conversating between ourselves. But just to make sure we're able to get through everything in our time frame here, we ask that we keep those questions in the chat. And we've got a few Bike Amend staff here today that can help continue those trains of thought to make sure that those thoughts get captured. Fantastic. A quick pitch of part of the work I did that I mentioned in Green Corps, so the Higher Education Bike Network. This is a great example of some of the folks that you might be seeing participating in this network and sharing some resources in the pursuit of tackling these grand challenges that we're all looking at common questions. And if there are great case studies of examples out there that we can share of what worked or hasn't worked for others, this is one great example of how you can use this network. Feel free to get in touch with me. My email is down there at the bottom, carl@bikeamend.org, in how you can participate in this program. We've got a listserv that goes out. We've got some online shared resources that can happen, as well as creating forums like this, as well as institution-specific workshops. Transitioning to today. So today specifically, like I said, we're focusing on bike share. I want to just highlight quickly before I pass it off to my experts why bike share on campuses specifically can be a great opportunity to jumpstart some of these programs. So we've got a few points here. So campuses are willing and engaged demographic. So students typically have lower car ownership rates. They're more willing to participate and explore multimodal options. Parking near campuses is typically expensive, as well as the payoff for a student typically isn't using their car more than a few times a month or a few times a week to get to where they need to go. So the value of having a car is lower in the financial sense. It's really, campuses are one of the best designed locations for a walking and biking lifestyle. I was having a conversation with a friend recently that really shared some of their angst for when they were so much happier when they were when we were in college together. And we dove into a really interesting conversation that it was really the only time in their life that they've lived in a walkable and bikeable community, and how much value that brought to their life. It was a big insight for me as I've gone into this work. Bike share can be a really great additive measure to existing programs such as transit or getting to and from other micromobility shared resources on a campus, as well as one of these common threads that I keep hearing come up in when I've talked to campuses and institutions has been that every year abandoned bikes is a really big issue. And if there's this shared resource so every student doesn't need to have their own, it really can help alleviate some of these problems that you're dealing with within your institution specifically. With that in mind, I want to keep us moving along really quickly here. I'm going to pass this off to our first expert speaking to us today from MnDOT. Elliott McFadden is the Greater Minnesota Shared Mobility Coordinator at the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and he currently serves as the MnDOT lead for the FTA AIM Grant Award to build a regional mobility as a service platform for the FlexPass parking and Transit Pass project at the ABC ramps in Minneapolis in partnership with the University of Minnesota. He's going to dive into a little bit more of his introduction and some of the history of bike share. I'm going to ask Elliott to share your screen here whenever you're ready to present to us.
Yep, I'm ready. Let's see. I think you have to stop. Yep, there you go.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Let me know if you can see that screen now.
That looks great.
Okay. Great. Good morning, and thank you for having me. Love to talk about bike share while I deal with all things shared mobility at MnDOT. Bike share is very near and dear to my heart. I've been involved in shared mobility for the past 15 years. I'm actually first starting the first car sharing system in the state of Texas, and then I was the founding CEO of Austin B-Cycle, the city bike share program in Austin, Texas. Also was a co-founder of the North American Bike Share Association, which is the trade association for bike share. I'm not going to cover this specifically in my presentation, but I also did launch a very successful bike share program at the University of Texas, so I can speak to some of the challenges and issues with the university bike share programs. But I'm also was very involved in the bike community in Austin. I was a board member of Bike Austin, and I'm currently a Nice Ride board member in Minneapolis, and have led several dozens of different innovation projects throughout my career. And what I wanted to do today was give you a little bit of background on the bike share industry, where it came from, where it's going, some of the other things that are happening in micromobility, because I think it's an important thing for you to understand, both not just the technology and the use cases, but also what's going on with the industry, because it will help guide some of the conversations that you're having with different players in this space. So a little brief history of shared micromobility. So we've actually had bike sharing for quite a while, although it got really popular in the last 10 years. The first generation of bike share actually started in the Netherlands. They were white painted bikes that were left all around cities. People could pick up a bike, ride it. When they were done, they just dropped it, and the next person would pick it up. This is very idealistic kind of idea from the 70s or 60s, and we actually had a program in Austin, Texas called Yellow Bike in the 90s that tried to do this. And problem was that it all starts out great. You release a bunch of bikes. After a while, they fall into disrepair or get stolen or cannibalized, so they don't really last. So there was an attempt in the 90s to start doing a more institutionalized bike share. So the first really organized bike share was in Copenhagen, and theirs was very basic bikes that was a coin deposit. So if you think about carts that you check out in the airport, where you put in a deposit and then you get it back when you return the cart, that's basically how it worked. It was very basic and mostly geared towards tourists who were visiting Copenhagen. But the real step forward came with the Willmar program in Paris back in 2007. That was the first large-scale software and technology-driven bike share program. You had hundreds of stations throughout the city. You could use different forms of electronic payment, membership cards, check out a bike, return it, and it was all based in stations. And that was our third generation of bike share. And that got very popular in the United States. So in the kind of late 2000s to 2010 timeframe, there was a lot of planning based on the success of the LEAD program. And so Nice Ride was one of the first in the United States, and they were all based on this kiosk station that had all of the electronics, and then the bikes would lock to that, and you would release it either through a credit card payment or a membership card. One of the challenges, though, of these were the high capital costs. So these stations are very expensive. Anywhere the lowest cost stations were in the $30,000 to $60,000 range with bikes, and so it was limited how much you could expand and put these in places. They also took up a pretty large footprint when you put a station in, and so what you saw, it was generally the model for this was public-private partnerships. You had either a local nonprofit or a private operator that was partnering with cities that were receiving sometimes federal money, sometimes local money, and then a combination of other kinds of grants and sponsorships to continue to operate. And again, they were initially very successful, but limited in their scope because of the cost to expand beyond the initial launch. And then the fourth generation that we saw were dockless bikes, and this really started in China. And what happened is, as the technology got better and better and more compact, you no longer had to be bound to the station as your way of communicating and checking out bikes. They had much less cost to put in, and it was much easier to deploy these in a lot of different locations because you weren't tied to a station. So it drew a lot of private investment, first in Asia and then from venture capital in the United States. But what we saw was an oversaturation of the market because it was relatively easy. The cost was low, the technology was much simpler. We had a lot of vendors get into this space, not always well capitalized or well organized. And in many cities where it wasn't well regulated, you had an oversaturation of bikes. And one of the other issues was that because this was going in lots of places where the station-based systems were focused on where there was already maybe some interest in cycling, these were going into neighborhoods where maybe there wasn't a lot of cycling infrastructure, it was hard to ride a bike. So the general ridership was low, and what we saw was a lot of street nuisance, and then the market collapsed within a year. All these major worldwide companies came to the United States and then withdrew, and there's very little in the way of these companies here today. But that model was a guide for the way scooters came in. Very similar kind of technology, but what we saw with scooters instead was that there was actually a lot more consumer interest in riding scooters. And so you had people who never were interested in bikes at all jumping on scooters. And so we had a much more potentially sustainable business model. But we had the same issues with oversaturation and struggle to regulate. And then the industry itself had issues because these were initially consumer models for home use that were being converted and left in the streets for weeks on end. They were breaking down and not lasting very long, ending up in unusual places. And so the industry has really been struggling to adapt and find a way to make this sustainable. So we're seeing now much more robust vehicles being built, different kinds of charging infrastructure, from charging stations to swappable batteries, but there's still a pursuit of trying to figure out what's the right balance between number of scooters and riders and making these things sustainable. And now what we're seeing is a fifth generation of bike share that's a hybrid. So stations and dockless. This is, you can see this today with the Nice Ride system, where we have bikes that can dock in the stations, and they can also be locked to mobile or less capital intensive station bike racks like this, you see, or simple regular bike racks. And we're seeing a large focus of electrification. There's substantially more people willing to ride bikes if there's an e-bike involved. But we still have questions about funding and business model. When I started Austin B-Cycle, my board chair used to say the first thing I learned in bike share school is that there's no money in bike share. And the truth of the matter is, like any transportation service, it's a very challenging thing to get to sustainability, let alone high profitability. So a lot of these businesses are still searching for a way to make these things work outside of public support or sponsorship models. And what that's was leading to is, in the last couple of years, there was a big land grab that went on because the private sector was trying to get as many customers in the door as possible. And so you had a lot of communities that maybe you wouldn't have expected bikes and scooters to show up where they did, and then the market contracted a little bit. And so I think what we're going to see longer term is, outside of the really dense urban areas, smaller communities are going to struggle to find operators and providers that want to just come in and run it with no support. So I think we're coming kind of back around to possibly that public-private partnership being a model, especially outside of high dense urban areas where people want to see bike share and scooters happen. So wanted to wrap up just by saying, kind of, where does this put us in the idea of infrastructure and advocacy? So most bike share early on was very recreational in use, and that had a lot to do with where systems were placed. They were placed in downtowns and tourist destinations, and there was also an idea with the industry that the tourists would help subsidize the program to help provide bike share for residents. And so there was not a lot of focus on equity, making sure that bike share systems served all in the community. Some notable exceptions: the Philadelphia bike share program from the start really focused on building a large portion of their bike share system in low income areas and communities of color, and did a lot of work within the communities to get people involved in and excited about bike share. So it hasn't always been an afterthought, but that's been a struggle for the industry in general. But I will say it's still a great entry point for cycling. I can't tell you, when we would work big events, how many people would come along. You'd have an instigator, somebody who loved cycling, and they'd bring a couple other people who hadn't cycled in years, and the joy on their face was incredible. So it's still a great low-cost way to get people excited about cycling. And there's safety in numbers. Our grant in Austin was funded in part because the idea that the more people that bike, proportionately the less crashes that happen with cycling. That's been shown in multiple studies. And so the more people we have cycling on the street, the safer it is for all riders. And the other thing is, when we look at infrastructure, how important bike share is in making bikes a part of built infrastructure, whether it's mobility hubs or being built along bike infrastructure. That's important. Bike share also needs to make sense. I can tell you, when we were siting stations in Austin, if I had nobody fighting me over where a station would go, I questioned whether that was a good space, because you need to have it where people want to go. And I would say, for those that are looking at just improving cycling in general, ride the popularity of e-bikes and scooters. These programs can help you create the market share that drives the discussion that you need the infrastructure. Where you don't, often these riders end up on sidewalks, so that you have these vehicles sharing spaces with pedestrians, which isn't safe for anybody. And so it can really help you drive and show community demand for good bike infrastructure, like protected bike lanes. And I'd finally just say that a good bike share system benefits all riders. So even if you never ride bike share, it helps improve the safety by adding more riders to the street, drive the conversation about infrastructure, and make bikes a part of the investment that communities need to make. And with that, would open up to any questions or thoughts people had.
Thank you so much, Elliott. It's such a great opportunity to give us a broad picture of the history, as well as what directions we can equitably go as we jump into some of the case studies to follow. I'm right there with you. If anyone would like to either jump in the chat box or jump in, unmute your microphone to ask any questions. And there will be great opportunities to continue this conversation and kind of build upon it as we go. But this is going to be our first opportunity to jump in and start a conversation today.
Elliott, this is Dorian with Bike MN, and you had to make me laugh about the yellow bikes in Austin because perhaps you saw my comment in the chat box that a lot of the yellow bikes in Minneapolis or St. Paul ended up on the bottom of the Mississippi River. I'm sure they ended up on the bottom of the river.
They did. That's the challenge of anything that's free floating and we had it later on with scooters. They ended up in the river. So
there is a comment or question in the chat box.
Yeah, how many companies are involved in bike share in the Twin Cities right now? It is just Nice Ride in partnership with Lyft. So there were some companies in previous years. I know Nice Ride used to be in St. Paul, and St. Paul investigated and started partnering with I believe it was Lime to put bikes in, and that ended up being kind of a short-lived trial. So there's a lot more interest right now in the scooter space. So both cities went through a process and selected a couple of vendors to provide scooter services. I know when the agreements came up in Minneapolis, I was asked to help with some of the scoring of that, and there were more vendors that applied than there were permits. So scooters are definitely where the private sector focus is right now, which kind of underscores, again, I think if we want to see bikes, I think we need to be looking at how you can build a partnership with an individual vendor that may involve putting some skin in the game, putting some either a financial incentive or building some infrastructure to help them be more successful. Okay, next question is I think one thing we have run into with our bike share is maintenance issues. We have a bike shop, but the shop is currently closed. Definitely, that's an issue. One of the things with the vendors in the bike share space that you try to overcome that is you have bike share specific equipment. And so if you're using, I'm not sure what kind of bike you're using, but if you're using consumer model bikes that you're converting to bike share, that has a lot of challenges because they're just not built for that outside day-to-day work. And so we had that with B-Cycle, which was our vendor, which is a subsidiary of Trek Bicycles. The first generation used a lot of consumer parts, and they broke a lot. And so we worked with them over time in a second and third generation to migrate our equipment over. And it was simple things like we had bells that broke all the time, and we finally had to go to a completely different bell. And so those are things also I would really look at. What are the points that are breaking most frequently on your bikes, and explore different options in that space, because the individual components can be a huge part.
Thank you, Elliott, and thank you for those questions in chat. Like I said, I hope this can be an additive conversation. As we spoke to the Twin Cities, we've got a representative from Nice Ride Lyft speaking to us just after the break later today. But first, before that, we're going to push out of the Twin Cities out to Willmar. I'm going to just give a brief introduction to Britta and Chris as they get their screen shared here. So Britta is entering her 4th year with the city of Willmar, where she was born and raised. She attended the University of Minnesota Duluth, where she studied public health education and promotions. She has background work in senior living setting and has taken an overseeing her city's outdoor pool and bike share programs. Chris is joining us as well. Chris has been a biker for many years in many countries. He is working with the city of Willmar, both in bike maintenance and with the utilities in energy conservation. Feel free just to jump in if I can help with anything on the technical side, but we'll we'll ask you to just get your screen shared there in a second so we can keep things moving along here.
Yep. First of all, Carl, I'd like to say thank you for correctly pronouncing Willmar, as opposed to everyone else who sees it says Willmar. So thank you very much for that.
I am a Minnesotan.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
All right, can you see our screen now?
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay.
Super. Well, thank you again, Carl, for having us. Like you said, we are from Willmar, and our population is roughly 20,000 people. We are entering our third season here with our bike share program called Bike Willmar, where we utilize the Colony Share software program, which is based out of Pocahontas, Iowa. They also just kind of up and started their software about 3, if not close to 4 years ago too. So pretty brand new for both of our bike share programs and software programs too. Our program launched in May of 2019. We operate 40 bikes, and we have 10 hub locations located throughout our city where people can go and check in and park their bikes, lock their bikes is always the goal, throughout any of our 10 hub locations throughout the city. We can set the price that we want to charge our riders and users as we feel needed, but we have strived at trying to keep prices very low and make sure we hit all of our users' needs so we can meet everyone, make it affordable for everyone to use. We also provide memberships too, so if people are interested in knowing they're going to commute daily, they can opt into a membership use as well. We use the Colony app, which provides, you need to have a credit card, and that's how people are able to rent the bike and then finish the ride, see where bikes are available throughout the city, and then purchase memberships as well. This year also, we've been featuring some of our local businesses on our map within the app. They're also offering some discounts for anyone who's using the program. So they just show proof of the app, and then they get $1 off or 50 cents off or a free cookie or something like that too. So that's been kind of fun, a way to partner with our local businesses and promote the program too. Our season operates generally from May to early October, obviously weather providing. It is Minnesota. We never know when we're going to get nice weather, but that's typically been our window of use throughout the last couple seasons. Right now we operate on $1 an hour rides, and like I said earlier, we have memberships available. This year we are offering those at $20. So that gets you your first hour for free, and then if you go on longer rides, then that's when your $1 an hour rent charge will kick in. Our program operates with one program coordinator, myself, one assistant program coordinator here, Chris, and then we have 5 part-time staff employees that go out every day and check all of our bikes throughout the city, making sure our locks are charged, all of our bikes are operable, kickstands, pedals, bikes, chains, brakes, all of those good things. And then, what did I say? The locks are charged. That's kind of the big part, I guess, for all of that. So those get checked daily. So it's not just a one-person job by any means. We keep an eye on it and track rides and stuff too. The software piece in our app stuff is probably one of the more been challenging parts with our program. Just getting all of our kinks worked out and getting all of our users trained in on how to use the apps and to rent the bikes and return the bikes appropriately. Within our Colony app side, our users have to create a profile. They have to have an operable credit card and enter all of those information pieces before they can start their ride. The app walks through all of those steps, and then we just ask that if they don't return the bike, they get charged a penalty fee, and then we get to go pick it up and return it back to a fence and hub. The locks that are on our bikes require charging, and we've noticed now that we're in our third season here that they're not holding quite as good of a charge as they once were. So we're having to kind of do quite a bit of maintenance with those. Some aren't working quite as well as they once were either. So
this includes like switch outs, entire switch outs for those batteries, which when you're looking at 3 years, that doesn't seem like a great system of operation because it takes a lot of maintenance. We have to take them all off every year. We're storing them correctly, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one thing we're looking at carefully.
Mhm. And like Chris said, we have to take them off because where we store our bikes for wintering, we it's not heated. If it was heated, that'd be another story. We could leave them on, but we aren't quite that lucky here. So that's one thing that's been kind of a challenge is those locks. And that's one of the pretty much biggest piece of our program is making sure those locks are operable for all of our renters. The admin of Colony has its own app. So that's where myself and Chris, we track renters, the transactions, make sure those are going through appropriately. And then if there's any rider issues that are taking place, that we can resolve those from the admin piece of the app. Then there's also an app called Linka, which is just primarily operates the locks. That's where we can track where the battery percentages are at for all of our locks. We can test them, we can update the firmware, make sure they're operating correctly.
I just want to reiterate, for us managing the system, we have to have Britta and I have to have 3 apps that we're kind of constantly looking at, checking up on, and making sure everything's updated. Our staff really only need 2 apps to do that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about maintenance. I just started last year, moving back to Willmar. And one thing that's kind of interesting about this program that's different from a lot of others is that this is really city run versus having a different company, having a bike share in our city, profit motive. So what that means is, we're doing a lot of the maintenance, both spring and fall. Again, checking lights, chains, brakes, paint, locks. We said approximately 2 hours of yearly bike maintenance. I think that was a really big thing this year and fall of last year, spring of this year, where we were doing it. So for the first 2 years, there wasn't a ton of maintenance going on, but now there has been, which has required more time, but hopefully not quite as much moving forward in the future. In addition to that, we need updates to the hub stations with signage and painting and all sorts of stuff like that, but that's really pretty minimal. On the other side, so that's the yearly maintenance, and that's specifically with the bikes. Then we have the daily maintenance, which is done by most of our staff. That is where Britta was saying, okay, we have these staff members go out, they check the bikes and the conditions, the battery and the locks, and making sure that they turn the locks on or unlock it and relock it so that we know there's not an issue for when the customer comes to try it out. We also have our staff members do regular input of information. Most of these staffers are high school students working for $12 an hour, or $11 or $12 an hour. But either way, it's important and valuable information that we're getting from them on our spreadsheet so that we can bring this information to the city or to whoever else is interested. Finally, Britta and I would have to monitor the rides periodically through the day, and that is including a weekend day. So it is kind of time consuming because we have a lot of customers who are trying this for the first time. There's some issues, they need help either with locking or with opening or something like that. And it can be a little frustrating because it's not always intuitive. And I think that's kind of the biggest issue we've seen with the app system so far.
And so the staff, like Chris said, is entering information on a spreadsheet. That's where we're tracking the battery percentages, and then just general tracking of the bikes. Because prior to having a bike share in the city of Willmar, we did operate the yellow bike system as well. So a lot of our city was kind of used to just leaving bikes wherever they felt. Exactly. So we had to kind of monitor where these bikes were getting returned for the first year for sure. And it's getting better each year, which has been good, but we're having to make sure that the bikes are getting returned to their appropriate hub locations to kind of retrain and diminish that yellow bike system that we once were operating on.
And then in addition, this is our map. We don't have a total full map of Willmar, but You can see those are the 10 locations. Britta and I have looked very carefully. I should say that those locations were set up when we initiated the bike program. We have been looking and exploring options for moving to the northwest side, which is a lower income portion of our population. Across the lake, you can't really see it in that map, but we do have desires to do that. But again, once you start doing that, then you have increased costs for getting our staff out there, increased difficulties with additional bikes and how much energy and time that's going to take, and then finding a location where we can get it done and set up. And then our statistics on our right-hand side for the 2020 season, we had 351 rides. It was kind of a tough season, I would say, for last year, only because I think COVID honestly had a lot of unknown consequences. And one of those were that not many people felt super comfortable biking, at least in Willmar for some reason. And last year, our biggest and most popular site was down for construction, and that's Robbins Island. It's a beautiful park where we have a nice bike area. It was down the entire year, so our ridership went down. I know that right now, do you have an idea of what our ridership looks like? We're breaking all kinds of records right now, so that's great news. But we may be even, at half or 2/3 of where we were last year total already. So it's really exciting, and we have a lot of people out there, so that's wonderful. But again, a lot of people just don't know about the program, how it works, what to do, and that is there's a little difficulty for kind of jumping on board with it.
So with that, we've been putting together some promotional items that are trying to draw more rides and get people aware of the program. Like I said earlier, we've been working with local businesses, so we've been running some promos with them as a way to increase riderships and then just get people into their doors as well, because they need the business just as much as we would like people to be riding bikes too. You can see we're doing a business feature, like I said, so we can do flags within our app. So when you open the app, you'll see, oh, there's an ad there for this business, and then it'll show the discount that business is offering as well. Then we've also put together some fun rides for people to give a try, date nights, fall colors, and then just a simple route for people that maybe don't know the area as well, or just looking for a new bike path to try. Then we also have some merchandise that we've been giving away too, just to bring awareness to the program.
I think one thing that's really cool about this portion is that when they log in, they typically have to have an email address when they sign up with this Colony app, and we have access to that. So what that means specifically is that we can say, this weekend, we're having this happen, a discount in one of our bars or something like that. And we haven't had quite a lot of success in people jumping on that bandwagon quite yet. But I think it's like, as we do it, more and more people will feel more comfortable with it. And then we also have a Facebook page where we're posting a lot of this information as well.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Well, thank you both so much for being here. I want to jump off with an initial question for myself. You highlighted some of that data and, of course, the disparities in the unusual year we had. Curious if you'd be willing to speak quickly to the hub locations that are located on the campuses in Willmar, and just what possibly students or others in the community using those bikes who are students or trying to get to and from those campuses, how they use the equipment and the experience as well.
So that's a great question, Carl. So we do have a campus here. We have the Midwest Technology Campus, which is actually a business center. And then we have Bridgewater College in Willmar, University, yeah. And we have yet to be able to work an agreement out with Bridgewater to set up a hub in that location. They are on the northwest side, and we just haven't been able to do that quite yet. We're hopeful in the future we will, but I believe that we've had very, very little usage on the northwest side of town, just because we have no access to a hub location around there. So I think that the schools have not been able to use them very much. In addition, schools such as high schools, middle schools, or elementary schools, as there's a need for a credit card, that kind of inhibits some of the younger population from using the bike share app or bike share program.
One thing that has happened is that if you're a parent, you can add multiple bikes to a rental. So if you're, Carl, for example, if you're going to go for a ride and you want to bring your kids along to go with you, you can add bikes to ride at the same time with your kids. So they can ride. It's just to initiate that initial ride is someone needs to be an adult with a credit card.
Sounds great. And there's a couple questions in the chat highlighting some of the funding model and financial backing. So as you mentioned, this is a public project with staff, and I'm definitely curious. We can possibly follow up afterwards with some resources of questions around the funding model, but curious how both that $1 an hour target was set, as well as some of the funding background of whether there was partnership involved or other financial backing.
Yeah, so like I said, the $1 an hour comes from, we're not out to really make big bucks off of this program, but we're trying to meet the needs of the community and make it a way for people, if they need a vehicle or a car like that they don't have, this is a way they can transportate to the grocery store, to get errands, to go to a park, just to keep it affordable and at a low cost as long as we can. We've gotten funding from many sponsors. I don't have the list in front of me right now, but dollars from the city, from the schools, from local large companies within the area sponsored the program as well. They're all highlighted on our bikes as well.
A question, and I don't even know this, is the sponsorship from the initial payment of the bikes, but they're not putting any dollars forward anymore. So right now it's housed under the Parks and Rec Department, and Britta, it's housed under the community center, and with Britta's budget, that's part of it. So current costs come from her budget for the bike share program, but it was initiated by all the 7 or 8 different sponsors throughout the area
to purchase the bikes and the software.
Yep.
Well, thank you both. And if there are further questions, we can continue to follow up with those, but I'm gonna pull us away in the sense of time and take us back to the programming. So we're gonna take a moment to highlight more of, for campuses specifically, what Bike-A-Men can be helpful with going forward, and spots where having a bike share on campus or making your campus more bike friendly can help you achieve some further status with the League of American Bicyclists. I'm gonna share my screen and ask Natalie to jump in and join us here.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Carl. I'm looking at the screen here about Bicycle Friendly America. I don't see my own picture on the screen, but hopefully you all can see me. So I'll go ahead and chat here. Carl, can you see me on the screen? Are you guys able to see me?
I can visually see you. Of course, there's a number of people joining us today, so people might have to adjust their gallery view, but you're definitely audible and visual.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for inviting me to speak on this webinar, Carl. My name is Natalie Gilly. I'm with the Bicycle Alliance in Minnesota. I work in Greater Minnesota, and so many of you on the webinar today I know and I've worked with, and I'm so proud of all the work that has been going on throughout the state of Minnesota. And it's great to hear from Britta and Chris from Willmar, and other folks I know are joining today that have been chatting. I know Luke's been on there as well. So there's lots of work that's been going on statewide. So a couple of things I'll share in the few minutes here. I have a couple of slides to share with you. One is the Bicycle Friendly America program I'll briefly mention, and then chat a little bit about the Bicycle Friendly University program. So this is a higher education network with folks on the call here today connecting related to university. and to how some of this bike share program might work for your students. So I will go ahead and share here about this. So the Bicycle Friendly America program is a program that is put out by the League of American Bicyclists. So this is an all-encompassing across bicycle-friendly state, community, business, and university. So the university is one of the programs as part of this bigger umbrella program. So there are opportunities to look at the roadmap for how to become more bicycle friendly. And through the process, you build your team and put together those points about your university that or business or community that make you more bicycle friendly. So if you'd like to go to the next slide, I'll dive right into this bicycle friendly university program here. So first I'll just share, in Minnesota, we do have 32 bicycle friendly communities and 6 bicycle friendly universities. So the universities that are on the list here include Bemidji State. So I am in Bemidji right now as I join you on this webinar, and am proud to share the bicycle friendly university status here of our local university. And I know there's Erica Bailey Johnson's on here on the webinar today, so I'll just give a nod to the work that she's done through the Sustainability Office and other leaders on campus that have done work there. So you'll see on the map here, there are bicycle friendly communities all across the state. So on the next slide, we'll look at just specifically here a few things about Bicycle Friendly University. There are 6 E's on the program, and you'll see on the screen here: encouragement, evaluation and planning, engineering, engagement, education, and equity. And the next deadline for Bicycle Friendly University is October 1st of 2021. This is a deadline that used to come right before the school year started in the fall, and it came once a year. And they did make a change to the timeline. So the university application is still due once a year. However, they did push it to October so that the students can return and then come together to put together the application and submit. So the timing is a little bit more amenable to submitting the application. So on the university application itself, so this is bicycle friendly university application. There are quite a few questions that the league will ask about your bicycle friendliness at your university. If you go to the section of D7, there is a section that's dedicated specifically to bike share. So you'll see on the screen here that bike share is on the BFU application, and it will ask you whether you have a program. And then you also, it's giving an opportunity to share if you had a program that's closed in the last 2 years. So that's, I think that's something that's kind of new. But you will put on there if you have a program, the name of the program, the website, how many bikes are in the system, and then what kind of program. So hopefully you can see on the screen here in D7D what kind of program it is. So you have lots of opportunities to kind of share some of the details about your program. And this is a key point. If you look at D7E, who's permitted to use the system? Is it open to the general public, only students or staff and faculty? And this is an important question because, in this case, you want to encourage students to ride, so getting more students on bikes, but you also have your staff and faculty, as long as people are attending in person, as we return to campus this fall, to be able to get around by bike. And then also, if you would like to have people that are coming to visit the campus who are not students or on faculty and staff, to be able to use the bike share system as well. So you might have guest speakers or other people that are attending different events and activities on campus who might like to participate in the bike share program that's being offered by the university. So that's just a brief update on the application, and as one piece to the Bicycle Friendly America program. And again, this is offered by the League of American Bicyclists. And Minnesota has, as we mentioned here, 6 bicycle friendly universities, and Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota plays a role in helping universities become more bicycle friendly and submitting the bicycle friendly university application. So the league are the ones that decide who gets an award, and BikeMN is here to help so that we can help all of you who would like to become more bicycle friendly with technical assistance and answer questions to become more bicycle friendly on your campus.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie. And again, today it's really going to be a great opportunity to keep moving forward and focusing on how we can keep making communities more bike friendly as well as campuses. But we couldn't go without taking a moment to both congratulate in his retirement as well as thank Steve for his career of working with us and really being a champion of this higher education network. So I'm going to ask Dorian to step in and just take a quick moment to acknowledge and thank Steve for his work.
Yes, and Steve, thanks so much for joining us today and all your work at the U and with bicycle advocacy in general. For those of you who don't know, I met Steve in the 1980s as an advocate for biking at the University of Minnesota, but also just bicycling in general. When the organization that formed Bicycle, or was the basis for forming Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota, the Minnesota Coalition of Bicyclists was formed. Steve was one of a small group of advocates that was part of that. He went on to found the bicycle program at the University of Minnesota, did all sorts of wonderful things like implement the counting program and discount program and incentives provided by the ZAP counting system, the bike shop on the campus, and ultimately a network and programming infrastructure and programming for students and faculty that achieved a platinum bike-friendly university ranking. So Steve, thanks for all your work for the last 40 years as a bicycle advocate. It's really wonderful what you've done in your career.
Thanks, Dorian. It's been a great career, and I really, one of my biggest hopes for what I've been doing all these years is the establishment of this network. It started working on this like 20 years ago with Nick Mason, who's now with, who is at the time was with Darrow Bike Racks, and now of course is with Bike Men. And we started kind of slogging away on this a long time ago. And it's heartening to see that it's still going on and that it's getting stronger and that there's more interest in it. And I think there's real potential here for this higher education network, because I think together we're all stronger and we can provide a more unified voice. And I think there's, like I said, I think there's a lot of potential in there. So thanks. Thanks for the kind words.
Thank you so much for still being willing to join us, Steve. I hope we can have a good opportunity to continue having you involved in whatever ways you wish to. So we're about halfway through our program here today. We're going to take a little break to pull away from presenters and jump into a little more discussion before we transition here. So I'm going to be pushing on to breakout rooms in just a few minutes here. We're tight on time again, so it's going to be a shorter conversation, but hopefully some questions can start to arise that we can discuss back out with the larger group. I'll dump these questions in chat, but it's really just an open floor for conversation and opportunities to meet some other folks you might be working alongside. I'm going to open the breakout rooms. I'll be here in the main section if anyone has any issues or if you need help with this process.
um, and work on the bike share system we have, along with other means of transportation and stuff. So that's where I'm coming from.
What am I, the last to go? I always am. I'm Luke. I work in public health down in Jackson, Nobles County. I'm not really tied to any colleges, but I do a lot with active living work down here. We do a Minnesota West. I believe the largest campus is in Marshall. And then probably the second largest campus would be in Worthington. And then Jackson, just probably maybe not even a half a mile up the road, there's a smaller campus in Jackson. So they don't even have bike racks there. So we're trying to do a little bit more with them, both in Worthington and in Jackson. So again, I don't have many ties to any colleges, just trying to start kind of building those partnerships with them.
Hi, I'm Gary. I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm from Minnesota State, Mankato here in Mankato. Just kind of a bicycle advocate across campus, helped with our bicycle friendly application 4 years ago. We're a bronze campus designation, and just kind of advocate to just getting bike infrastructure across campus, kind of getting people together to help, make more awareness of having bike things across campus. We don't have a bike share officially on our campus. There's a campus recreation program, Adventure Ed, that does have some bicycles that they will have for groups once in a while for some group rides. We have about 85 or so bike racks across campus. Usually around 300, 350 bikes are in those racks during the general academic year or so. So we have about, I think, 4 bike repair stations or bike pumps, and with tools and things like that from Darrow across campus. Students can have their bikes inside the residence halls to store if they want. So just a few things about our campus there.
Hi, everybody. I'm Connor Cox. I work for Tool Design. We're a consulting firm that does a lot of bike and pedestrian planning work. So I don't have any ties to any universities or even specific communities either, but just joined the webinar mostly to learn from the presenters. So.
Very cool. Connor, a question. Do you have any examples of things you guys have worked on lately?
Yeah, all sorts of stuff. I guess I'll maybe just mention a couple of projects that I'm working on. We're leading the Capital City Bikeway interim design study in downtown St. Paul. So that's part of the city of St. Paul's ongoing effort to build out a network of separated bikeways downtown. So recently finished working on 9th and 10th Street and Wabasha Street. And we designed Jackson Street about 5 years ago, which has been implemented. So if you've been down there, you've probably seen that.
It's a really nice lane, yeah.
And then also working on the comprehensive plan for the city of Moorhead, and I know they're interested in various shared mobility and potentially bike share expansion. So.
It's always fun to see everyone's faces pop back out. I hope I didn't interrupt anyone mid-thought. We're going to be jumping into our break here. So if anyone was in the middle of a conversation, feel free to jump it out here or share any common questions that might have come up. We're going to take a 5-minute break. So we're going to please plan to join me back here at 11:15. And we're going to jump into a couple more presentations focusing on metro area with back to back. We've got Nice Ride Lyft followed by the University of Minnesota, where a lot of those bikes are present. So again, 11:15, if you're able to rejoin us, and we'll jump into those presentations. Thank you. I'm going to get us started here again quickly. If you can hear my voice, just feel free to rejoin us. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Chase, while he gets some his slides ready to present. So Chase was born and raised in the Twin Cities, University of Minnesota alum, previously worked at Target, and is now serving as the operations manager for Lyft Nice Ride in Minneapolis bike share system. He says, oh, sorry, more than he should in a day because he has Minnesota Nice running through his veins. And he's currently focused on improving first mile, last mile transportation in Minneapolis through the Nice Ride system. So I'll stop sharing here quickly. Chase, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Carl. Share my slides here. Perfect. Let me make sure I can still see the chat. There we go. All right. Can you guys see my slides?
Looks great to me.
Perfect. Cool. Well, thanks for having me here, Carl. Happy to speak on behalf of Nice Ride and Lyft. I've been with the system since 2019, but as Elliott has alluded to, Nice Ride goes back a lot farther than that. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So just an overview of the system. It was launched in 2010, and up until today here, we're servicing Minneapolis and the University of Minnesota. This does also include the U of M St. Paul campus. We don't currently operate in the city of St. Paul, mainly focused on Minneapolis and a couple of neighboring parks. Just last year, we launched our brand new e-bikes. So they're pedal assist. I feel this group is very familiar with e-bikes, but it's a pretty great ride if you've never gotten on one. Makes you feel like Superman. And then actually, Lyft did launch scooters in 2019 in Minneapolis, and then in 2020, we integrated it with the Nice Ride brand. Looking at today, We have over 2,000 bikes on the ground in Minneapolis right now, and over 1,000 of which are e-bikes. Looking back to 2015, we've had over 200.5 million rides since then. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to pull data all the way back to 2010, but still great to see that we're in the millions in Minneapolis. Looking at specifically our stations in Minneapolis, so we actually have two types of stations now. The picture on the top, you can see over here, is our docking station. And this works for both our e-bikes and our green pedal bikes. It works by pretty much inserting the front tire into those docks, and there's a mechanism that latches onto them. New as of last year are the stations below. We call them e-stations. They work with both our e-bikes and our scooters, and they utilize a cable lock that is found on both of the vehicles. So as Elliott kind of shown this, the main advantage here is lower capital costs, a lot easier to add hundreds of these new stations, which we did last year. We added over 200 of them, but still helps keep things orderly, gives people a place to park their vehicles, and just helps connect more people to micromobility. So on the map on the right, you can kind of see how these are distributed throughout the city. Those green pins are regular docking stations, and then those blue pins are e-stations. And you'll see the city of Minneapolis is outlined in this red here, and you'll see we have a couple stations outside. This green one is our University of Minnesota St. Paul campus, and then we have a couple over here in some neighboring parks that are part of our service area. Looking at a big topic as of late, COVID. So what did COVID do to our system? So it was actually kind of interesting. So for those who don't know, the Nice Ride system is seasonal. So we operate from April to November. And a lot of the lockdowns started happening in March. The team quickly had to think, how is this going to affect our year? Excuse me, how is this going to affect our year? Is there anything we have to change? We still need staff. Our warehouses still stay open. Things have to keep running. This is still a transportation service that we provide to the city. So in no means are we going to not run this service this year. But how can we adapt? And so, we still launched on time. We still launched in the month of April. We still moved forward with our fleet plans that we had for the year. In terms of ridership, looking at April and May, and you kind of see on the chart on the right, the blue lines are our 2019 rides. Our red is our 2020. 2020 was surprisingly a little bit higher, but I think that was mainly because of launch dates. But looking at May, you can see we greatly underperformed from the year before. I don't think a lot of this was very surprising. Commuter traffic was pretty much non-existent. A lot of the city was shut down. I think it was also mentioned maybe people weren't feeling comfortable getting on the bikes. It's a shared system. So, somebody else touched this. Is it clean? Is it sanitary? Things like that were obviously questions that were top of mind for riders. But then this really interesting thing happened where in the summer, in that July, August timeframe, our rides actually started to outpace the year before. And I think a lot of people on this call can relate, but once you were in your house for 3 months and had nothing else to do, a lot of people were just looking to get outside and do something, and biking was a great option. And so we saw that a strong majority of our riders were just casual. They weren't commuting to point A to point B. They were just going around lakes. They were going with friends, stuff like that. And historically, Minneapolis and bike share has been very casual, but it was definitely a lot greater in 2020. Looking at this year so far, we see that ridership trends are pretty aligned with restrictions being lifted, so mask mandates and return to work. A lot of the downtown Minneapolis area has still not returned to the office. Major corporations like Target still don't plan to go back until September. So we still are missing a lot of that commuter traffic. And so looking ahead, we're taking this year to evaluate new ridership trends. Are we going to get that full commuter traffic back? We're not sure yet. And a big piece we're doing right now is actually resiting a lot of our stations around the city to see is there better locations for these. If it's more residential riding or business riding, can we put stations over in those areas instead of in the downtown area? Also, 2 years in an urban environment is a very long time. And so you have new high-rise apartments, the university, I graduated from the U of M in 2017, and I went back there the other day and it's unrecognizable. And so I think just constantly adjusting our systems, whether it's COVID or any other year, I think is the right choice to improve the system overall. But looking more closely of how we integrate with higher education. So the University of Minnesota is a big partner for us. They are included in recurring collaboration meetings that we have on a regular basis throughout the season. And during these times, we discuss the status of the system. We work together to solve any issues we might be dealing with. And they also help shape the future of the system. And the reason for that is, in 2020, 23% of our riders were students. And that's not a really big surprise to us. Minneapolis is home to a lot of colleges in the metro area, even more. And as great points have been brought up throughout this, students are just a great candidate for bike share. They don't own cars. They're trying to get, between classes really quickly. They're just trying to get around the city, trying to go out with friends. They're a great candidate. And so it wasn't a big surprise for us. But it's not just in Minneapolis. We have big partnerships with universities all around the country. A great example is the Blue Bike system in Boston. And so they actually work really closely with Harvard University, and almost a third of their entire system ridership comes from that school. And that's done in a couple of ways. Universities tend to either purchase or subsidize memberships for students, or they also end up sponsoring stations. So getting actual physical stations on campus, near your student union or something like that, really helps to accelerate that ridership and put them front of mind for students. But ultimately, we understand that micromobility needs to be accessible for everyone. I think a great point Elliott brought up is that I think all of these operators across the country are trying to figure out the right balance of a lot of variables. I think e-bikes and e-scooters definitely drive a lot more ridership, but they come with a much higher operating cost. And so that, will naturally drive up prices for those types of vehicles. However, everyone needs to be able to get on a bike. Everyone needs to be able to get on a scooter. And so because of that, we do make sure that we have affordable transportation options. And we accomplish that through Nice Ride for All. And so Nice Ride for All really makes micromobility in Minneapolis more accessible for low income residents. And what is it exactly? Well, it's an annual membership that costs only $5 a year and provides unlimited free 45-minute pedal bike rides, $0 unlock fees for e-bikes and scooters, and heavily discounted per minute fees. And I think the best part of this, and what's new this year, is that we've added a new qualification to enroll, and that's federal student aid. So if any student gets a Pell Grant or is on FAFSA, it automatically qualifies them for this program, which I think is just the best thing and the thing I'm most excited about this year, because almost the entire university is eligible at this point. And so I'm really excited to see, as we work with local universities, not just University of Minnesota, but other colleges in the area, of getting students into this program, because it really truly does make bikes and scooters a lot more affordable. That was really quick, and those are all the slides I had, but I know that there's a wide range of questions, so I wanted to leave some time for Q&A. So if you guys have any questions on your mind, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, I do have a short list that I pulled from earlier.
Fantastic. Thank you again for being here, Chase. Feel free to unmute yourself if anyone wants to jump in. Of course, it's hard to have this conversation without Nice Ride in the room. And it is just fantastic news about the Nice Ride for All program. I've definitely had some good experience in my past positions trying to distribute and push a lot of those $5 vouchers to be able to be eligible for the program.
That's great to hear.
You mentioned you had some other questions. If you want to jump into those, if others want to throw theirs in the chat or keep it moving along.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on the chat. Otherwise, I'll start kind of going through some of these questions that were passed along. One asked about typical system size. So Lyft works in a lot of markets across the country, and most of our systems are pretty large. So in Minneapolis, our system is over 2,000 bikes. In other areas of the city, I think the lowest we have is about 400 bikes, and those are like e-bike onlys. Usually in our pedal bike systems, they're within the thousands. So we're definitely on the top end of the spectrum in terms of size, and we don't have a ton of experience with smaller systems. And I can definitely relate with the issue of economies of scale, operating these smaller systems and having your own mechanics system and moving bikes around and a customer service. I think customer service is the one that always gets overlooked the most, is that people are always going to have some type of issue renting a bike, and providing that 24/7 support is definitely crucial, but very difficult. And so, we definitely get a lot of the benefits of having large systems all over the country and being able to use, one customer service line for everyone, but can definitely understand the struggles a lot of smaller systems are facing. Another question was, who takes on maintenance of systems? So like I said, for us, everything is internal. And again, I started in 2019, so this is all information passed along to me. But from what I've heard is back in the day, Nice Ride did partner with local bike shops to do all their repairs. And so it was all out of those buildings. But within actually, I think just the last few years, getting their own spaces and their own mechanics and hiring full-time associates to do that. And so we actually in Minneapolis have a unique situation where we have two partners. And so we have Motivate as a partner for operating our bikes. And so they have their own staff of mechanics that bring the bikes back to the warehouse if needed and do the repairs there. We also have a separate set of staff for scooters as well that do all those repairs in-house as well. And so I think there was this interesting model that was seen with scooters when they first came out, is that anybody could sign up to be a mechanic, or anybody could sign up to, charge a scooter in their house or something like that. And I honestly, I don't know if there's any operator that still does that. There may be one or two. But the obvious issues that were found during that is quality control. You don't know if that person is trained to do that job. You don't know if they're doing a good job. They put it in an app, I fixed this. I don't know for sure. And so a lot of those like quality control issues were, I think, a big part or big issue with that type of process. And so that's why we definitely focus on doing everything in-house, so that we know things are getting repaired and things are getting repaired correctly. And it's just a lot easier to track all of that. Potential for partnerships with bike shops and other businesses. So even though we are large scale, we have all sorts of partnerships. So we partner with local businesses in the city, whether it be bike shops or other programs where we can get low-income residents onto micromobility. We also have sponsorship agreements. Sorry, ignore my dog. Sponsorship agreements, our largest one being Blue Cross Blue Shield. So they contribute a significant amount of money to help the system operate. As Elliott mentioned, there's not a lot of money in bike share. It's at the end of the day, it's a core pillar of transportation for the city, and making sure that transportation is affordable and equitable isn't very profitable. But that just because, Lyft is a for-profit company doesn't mean, our goal is to make a ton of money off this. It's we want these systems out there. We want it to be part of a, larger overall package of transportation. And so having these types of agreements and sponsorships with like the city or, private businesses, I think is what's really needed to make these types of systems work. And I think we'll see a lot more of that across the country, especially with a lot of these newer scooter companies.
Thank you, Chase. I'm going to take a moment there with that moment on partnerships and pass it off to the U of M, one of those great partnerships that's going on. So Eric Bauer is going to be our next presenter. He's the transportation planner who joined Parking and Transportation Services at the University of Minnesota in 2017 after graduating from with a double degree in urban studies and political science. He's also temporarily filling in for the alternative transportation manager position, as we alluded to earlier with Steve's retirement, which manages biking programs, including Nice Ride, as well as his role covers a wide breadth of anything transit related. He enjoys that no 2 weeks and no two projects are the same. While bike share and other bicycle programs are relatively new to Eric, he's excited to contribute, learn, and sometimes teach through coordination with other bicycle programmers. Eric, whenever you're ready.
All right. Let's see here. Is that okay? That's working. Okay.
Looks great.
So thanks for that introduction. As mentioned, I'm temporarily covering the role vacated by Steve Sanders when he retired, who oversaw everything bike related on campus. I've spent a lot of the last few months learning about everything we have going for us and for bicyclists at the University of Minnesota. And Steve was really integral in making all of that happen. So thank you, Steve. Just a brief system overview. So Chase at Lyft described a lot of this, but Nice Ride at the University of Minnesota launched in fall 2010 at the same time as Nice Ride started in the city of Minneapolis. And that was before Lyft was the public-facing operator. There are 19 on-campus kiosks or docked stations currently, and those are all placed by agreement. And each of those typically have 15 to 30 bicycles, but there's always a lot of empty spaces left to allow people to end their rides. We started with 11 on-campus kiosks in 2010, and we've added more based on demand and increased interest, and as we've learned more about where the gaps are in our systems. We have many kiosks and those dock stations that are near campus also. So our campus is an urban campus. We're right in the heart of the city. And there's a lot of housing and commercial areas that are adjacent to campus. As Chase said at Lyft, dockless bikes, dockless e-bikes were also introduced in 2020, and we're excited to have those operating on campus. Our docked or kiosk stations, we get a site plan from the vendor whenever they want to install a new location, or perhaps there's a construction project that is going to require that we need to relocate one of their existing locations. So that site plan, things that we're looking for, we're looking at the space and how much space is available. Is it a historic part of campus, and how is it going to fit with the aesthetic of the area? How big is the space? We don't want to be blocking. We have a lot of wide sidewalks on campus and big plaza areas, and those are going to be better sites than narrow sidewalks. We want them in high volume areas. Of course, bicyclists want to be near their destination. Those are some of the things that we're looking at on the site plans. Licensee, so Nice Ride is responsible for all of the maintenance of the kiosks and the bikes that are at the kiosks. So it's pretty rare that I think, at least I haven't ever had to reach out to ask if they repair a station or clean up any debris that's around. But that is something that we built into our agreements, is a time frame within which we expect that repair to occur, as well as we had some fees built into the agreement if the university did end up having to clean up any debris or trash. And then we had a provision for kiosk relocation. So we have had some construction projects, and infrastructure is always changing on campus. So when we need those to be relocated, that's something that's in the agreement also. For dockless parking and e-bikes, this is something that I'm still just learning a lot about, but early dockless systems around the country all had parking challenges. Some had dumping challenges with scooters just being, not scooters, sorry, scooters also, but dockless bikes just being dumped and piled up. And I'm sure we've all seen images of that from overseas also. So we wanted to make sure that these bikes didn't end up blocking building entries, accessible ramps, or our sidewalks. Luckily, we have a lot of bike parking spaces around campus, and almost every building has bike parking within eyeshot of the front door, probably really close by. So on campus, Nice Ride dockless bikes have to be parked at either a kiosk or at a bike rack. So Chase showed a slide with some green and blue markers to show either the physical infrastructure or that kind of, I forget what you call it, Chase, but the less permanent stations that are typically just marked with striping or paint on the sidewalk. So on campus, that's just any bike rack. And that's enforced through either user fees that Nice Ride can issue fees or fines basically to users if they have a repeat pattern of ignoring the rules and they're parking the bikes in a problematic area. All bikes have to have a locking mechanism, and that was important to the university. And it's the same thing that going forward with scooter and scooter share. And then they're responsible for maintenance. Other program elements that I think are really important, we do have the option to geofence either no ride or slow ride areas. So we do have one spot on campus, and there are many throughout the city where, for whatever reason, we don't want people to be riding at all. So typically that's a slow ride area where their speed might be reduced electronically, although they can always pedal a bit faster. There's also the Nice Ride for All eligibility expansion, like Chase talked about. So we're really excited about that. And we haven't done a lot of promotion of that quite yet, but in advance of this next school year and in August and September, we'll be promoting that a lot to students and student groups around campus. We have DarrowZap on campus, which is a really great system that uses radio frequency ID chips to basically count actual rides that people make around campus on their bicycle. So it's something that you attach to your bike, and there's stations around campus that'll read you or scan you. And it's really great for our incentive programs that Steve set up that incentivize people to bike more around campus if they're already biking, or to get on a bike with different rewards and incentives. So that's linked with Nice Ride accounts. So you can get your points through riding a Nice Ride. And we also used to have subsidized memberships for staff and faculty at the university. And unfortunately, we don't have that anymore. But that's something that I'd like to get started again if that was possible. And that's something that other universities that are looking into having bike share, that I think it's a great thing to do if the budget's available. One thing that I think is really important is collaboration. So when all of our bike share system the past decade, as well as scooter share that we've had the past few years, has been set up, continuity with the other jurisdictions is important. We're right in the heart of the city. So when we're choosing vendors and figuring out, we're going through the RFP schedule and figuring out what the different requirements are and how long they'll be able to operate on campus, we want to make sure that it's important to us, at least, that we make sure there's continuity, so we don't end up with devices being dumped on campus or devices that you can ride here, but you can't ride 3 blocks away. So for a lot of the campuses that might be considering bike share in other places throughout the state, that collaboration with the city, I think, is really important. And like Chase said, we have meetings with the city, with the Minneapolis Park Board, and with Chase and Lyft to talk about data or trends, to share observations, and to troubleshoot problems, as well as to talk about opportunities for promotion and engagement. Those are some of the things that I've learned about our system, and I'll see if there's any questions.
Thank you so much, Eric. I saw throughout your presentation, there were a couple chats. There was a question about mobility hubs more broadly, if there are anyone who has any thoughts to those, but if there are questions for Eric more specifically, before we keep things moving along here.
I have a question.
Feel free to jump in.
First of all, coffee for everybody. I'm really bad at chat. Apologies. Secondly, I'm just curious about data and how valuable. I know NiceRide used to in the app have a on your usage how many gallons of gas you saved and some environmental sustainability kind of climate data. Is as we see climate change and sort of that becoming a perhaps bigger deal, is there going to be more funding from hopefully sustainability sorts of angles? And for usage, is that something of interest to universities and to students? You know, my bike share trip is saving X amount of carbon. Do those questions make sense?
Yeah, I think those are really great questions. I don't feel I have answers at the tip of my fingertips for the university community. I'm still making those connections with our sustainability coordinators and the other people at the university that are really passionate about those kinds of topics. But Carl and others that are on this call could address that, I think.
I'm gonna see if anyone else has an answer to that, possibly Dorian from the U, or if someone else has had thoughts about integrating those in their own program, or any success in partnerships with students or others. Feel free to jump in here as well.
Boy, Carl, I don't have a number at the tip of my tongue either, but we do have on our new website that's coming, we're going to have at least some statistics on that kind of stuff. So let's stay in touch. And Michelle, we can talk more later.
Sounds good. Thank you. I just see pressure like from European bike share conversations I participate in that you know, the Paris Accords, et cetera. There's a lot of pressure that I don't think we're feeling yet, that other countries are experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, there are wonderful numbers out there that e-bikes get the equivalent of 1,000 miles per gallon, you know, factoring in the charging requirements, and you know, they're just all sorts of wonderful options that, you know, that they're providing, and we can talk more about that on our web. We're going to talk more about that on our website, and get more involved in that in the Sustainable Transportation Advisory Council at MnDOT. So those are all great questions.
Well, I hope we can keep this conversation building. We're going to squeeze in our last presenter here. So David's going to be joining us from Concordia College in Moorhead, where he's majoring in political science and English writing, and he's a minoring in environmental policy. He's been working at Concordia's sustainability initiative since 2018, and he has maintained the position of the program intern as well as transportation intern. He is currently serving his second year as the Student Government Association sustainability advocate, and hopes to continue studying sustainability issues in the field of law. David, whenever you're ready, feel free to share your screen or join us for the presentation here.
All right, sounds good. I'll share my screen real quick. All right, how is that for everyone?
Looks great.
Okay, sounds good. Well, yep, I'm David Kelm. I'm going to be a senior at Concordia, and I'm in charge of the our bike share system here on campus. So just a little bit of background. Let me switch slide here. we call it cob bikes because at Concordia, we're the Concordia Cobbers, and everyone likes little names, especially in the MIAC schools. So I'll refer to it, our bike share system, as the cob bikes. Now, it started in 2013, and our Student Government Association allocated $5,580 for the initial purchase of 12 bikes, 12 locks, and 12 helmets. And that was just the bare minimum of what we needed. 2014, we built a 3-season housing sort of spot for our bikes, as well as a fix-it station with a bike pump and all the wrenches that's open to the community as a whole. 2016, we became a bike-friendly university. And just this last year, our fleet bumped up 20 bikes because a local church donated 8 more bikes. So we were really able to build on our current fleet. Now, sort of why we did it, I wasn't there in 2013, but I was able to read the brief and the reason behind it. And it really goes back to Concordia's dedication of community health and the Earth's health. We put a lot of emphasis in, micro transit and access to transportation. The Fargo Moorhead area doesn't have a great centralized metro transit system. We do have a bus, and Concordia does give every Concordia student has free bus fare, but it takes about 45 minutes to travel about a mile on the bus. So it's real slow. It's pretty inconvenient. And we have a lot of international students. So it really helps for those who don't have a license to be able to go pick up a bike and travel to the grocery store. If they have an off-campus job, you can travel with the bike. And just down below, I have a little blurb from the actual proposal, and it really focuses on that access to green transportation. We have a really important mind on our carbon footprint and just being able to live a more healthy life, because we subscribe to a view of sustainability that's an all-encompassing view, not just necessarily the environmental sustainability, even though that's a huge factor, but community sustainability as well, promoting healthy communities and social relationships. Now, looking at the funding model of our sustainability program, and more specifically our cob bike program, we did get that initial around $500 or $5,580 in 2013 from our Student Government Association. We continue to get money from that funding source for any special projects we have. We've had the cob bike program for about 10 years now. I think it's 8 years, but we need constant upkeep on it. And so for the first time in nearly 10 years, we're doing a total undertaking of a total bike tune-up of all 20 bikes. So that's around $2,000 with a local bike shop. And we get that money from SGA as well. We apply for funding and they allocate the $2,000 for us. All right, on a year-to-year basis, we get our $600 annually for bike tires, tubes, chain repair from our student activity fund. Now, the student activity fund it's a funding pot that all campus organizations have. Students pay about $5 in on. It comes out of their tuition, and it comes out to be around $10,000. Now, the cob bike fund gets 600 of that to use at our discretion. We can use it for mainly maintenance, upkeep, buying tools if we need. But that's where a broad majority of our funding comes from. And the fleet itself, I wasn't there for the initial purchases of the bikes, but the initial 12 were some hybrid bikes, the hybrid Raleigh Cadet FT0s, 2013 model. And honestly, they've worked phenomenally. We don't have a Nice Ride or something like that. We just purchased them through our local bike shop, Great Northern Bicycle Company. And they've helped us through every step of the way. I'll talk a little bit more about our relationship with them later. But they painted our bikes, did all the detailing, tuned them up, and helped us through the process of selecting the right bikes that the broad majority of our community can use. and they've worked great. They've required minimal upkeep, aside from sort of your basic yearly maintenance. And then this past year, the local church donated those 8 bikes. You know, we have a 1977 Schwinn now, some Raleighs from the 60s, and they're great bikes. Don't get me wrong, but they require a lot of specialized parts. And so I'll get into a little bit more of the maintenance, but along with those bikes that are really outdated, sort of specialized parts for the rear cassettes and stuff like that, it's just not standardized. So you end up having to buy these little tools that only work on the one specific bike. You know, we're grateful for every donation we get, but it's definitely requires a little bit more time and money investment. But the maintenance is something that I work on personally. We have one bicycle intern, which is me right now. And we do constant upkeep. A lot of times tires pop. The sidewalks in Moorhead are pretty bumpy. And so you get a lot of wear and tear on the tubes themselves. But right now I'm piloting a spreadsheet with our library who works on the checkout, which I'll get to in the logistics part of this presentation. But, you know, it's really nice because we have 20 bikes, 20, I think we have an extra one, so 21 bikes. And this shows every bit of what information we need. So if I see that, oh, it's bikes in the red because a student came in saying they popped a tire, I can just go on here and say bike 12 needs a tire. What tire size is that? It's a 26-inch tube. I don't have to send an email to anyone. I don't have to go out to the bike rack to check what size tube it is. I can just order it from our bike shop, and really no questions asked. Or if I'm working on a bike, they know not to check it out because I put it in the red, and it's really nice, super convenient, and it just saves a lot of time. So it's worked great so far. It's our second month trying this, and you know they've enjoyed not having to see me as much, because I'm not there to check out a book. I'm there to sell them. They can't check out a bike, and so it's worked really well, especially just for the ease of saving a trip down to our bike rack. And then the maintenance fee comes out of that $600, as I said earlier. We get that yearly. Now the logistics of it, sorry for the blurred picture, but that's our Carl B library. And we partner with our library because we like I said before, we don't have a like nice ride. We don't have a logistics system or technologically advanced system. We have bike cables with padlocks, and so we had to find an infrastructure for the best way for students to access checkout. And what better system than the place on campus where students constantly check things out? It's the library. So I also work in the library as well, and we use a site called HMS, and that's used to check out all of our books. We simply put the bike number 1 through 20, or if we get more, as many as there are. They have all the bike keys to the padlocks there, and they check out a bike key, and the student can have it during the summer. They can have it for up to a week, because again, we're focused. We have a lot of international students who stay for the summer on campus housing who don't have vehicles. And so if they have a job off campus, it's really nice for them to have that bike for a week at a time, and then they can renew it for another week. But it really enables them to bike to wherever their job is, get over to parks, just promote a healthy lifestyle without having to worry about the bus. And during the summer, or during the school year, for the times that it doesn't snow, you can check out a bike for up to a day. Typically it's for students that want to get out for a Friday night, want to go to a park, want to go see a ball game in this fall or something like that. So it's really nice, and we just get a lot more traffic during this school year, so that's why it's a little less time. But our community partner, this is the Great Northern Bicycle Company. It's in a really cool building next to the train tracks. It's an old train station, but they've helped us through every step of the way. We purchased our bikes through them. Like I said, they did all the detailing. They're going to be the ones that I bring the bikes to get tuned up this July. And we have 20 bikes coming in, and they are more than welcome to having that many in their bike shop at one time. And one of the things that I'm really hoping to do this fall is a collaboration for everyone in the community, particularly students on campus who do have a bike, a rundown bike or whatnot, to have a sort of a bike clinic where Concordia funds Great Northern Bicycle Company to come in and just tune up any bike that a student has, not even part of our fleet, just so that, that access to transportation is really crucial to us. We want to promote the healthy lifestyle, and doing that will enable a lot more students to do that. And our bike share system, it's open to faculty, staff, and students. So no matter what part of the college you work in, it's available for you to use so long as you have a Concordia ID. And so that's pretty much everything about our bike share system. And I know I had room for questions and answers, but yeah.
Thank you so much, David. There are a couple of questions in the chat. You can jump in on this one specifically, or anyone else can jump in. There was a question whether anyone has tried winter bike share programs, either that be fat tire or studded tire. I know the question of seasonality came up through a few of our presentations today.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see, I love winter biking personally. I'd love to see that. And I think a large component of that is just going to be cost, because there are different kind of upkeep as well. You have the fat tire bikes, and they're going to be different than the hybrids. And so that's going to be a factor. I'd love to see it get implemented, because again, if we focus on transportation, and jobs don't stop during the winter. And so hopefully implementing that would be something we look into in the future. We don't right now.
I definitely love the idea of it. I hope this has been a good introduction to both some bigger picture bike share questions, as well as some of the challenges or opportunities that present on campuses specifically. I want to make sure I'm taking a quick moment to be respectful of everyone's time. I know we're just up at the noon hour here, so I just want to say thank you all to all of our presenters. I appreciate everyone sneaking in this quick time on the virtual setting with us here today. And just a quick heads up to watch for a post-event survey from us. One of the big questions we're trying to answer is how the virtual setting suits this forum, whether that be through networking or accessibility to you, and what opportunities for a virtual or a hybrid opportunity we can have in the future, so we can make decisions on our back end. As well as if this is a conversation that I know we're just getting started and starting some of these shared resources or case studies. If you'd like to continue this conversation, feel free to reach out with any questions or join the higher ed network, which I spoke to earlier today. So again, I want to be respectful and make sure those who have other meetings to jump off to have the opportunity here, but the call will stay on for any further questions or conversations that might come up as well. Awesome. Whether those be for, I know we're ending just at the end of David's presentation here. If you have any questions for David or any networking or conversation that you want to jump into here, please feel free to share.
Thanks for hosting, Carl. Do you know where the recording will be accessible at?
Yeah, so we'll be sharing it both through BikeMN's email, and I can make sure to get it out to you specifically if you aren't on that email chain.
Yeah, that would be great. I need to also get on that email chain. Yeah, would love to share some of these presentations with some other folks that I know. I thought they were really great. So
fantastic.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
BikeMN has a YouTube channel, and it'll be posted there, right, Carl?
I've got the recording. I'm gonna trust our team to put it out through the best channels.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Thank you all. Thank you
Bye,
all.
bye, Steve.
In the virtual setting, I know it's got its positives and its negatives.
Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.